When it first aired back in 2007, Breaking Bad was an immediate hit with critics and its devoted fan base. Though its ratings weren't off the charts, the word of mouth was enough to keep it going. By the time the series concluded in 2013, it was one of AMC's biggest shows and considered by many to be one of the greatest television series ever. But as much fun as it might have been to create, working on Breaking Bad could be quite challenging for the cast and crew. From emotional tolls to physical obstacles, there were many hurdles to overcome. Let's take a look at some of the biggest ones. The cast had to face their fair share of challenges over the course of Breaking Bad's 5+ years. Because of the intense subject matter, the show could be emotionally or physically taxing. Let's start with Bryan Cranston, because why not? He's the star of the show, right? And the dude is so amazing. Not only does he sound like an all-around great guy, both generous and hilarious, he's completely devoted to his craft. Take, for instance, what Breaking Bad creator Vince Gilligan had to say about the accomplished actor. Gilligan called Cranston one of the most courageous actors I've ever even heard of, let alone worked with. He went on to state that the actor is always giving really smart input, which is not surprising in the least. There are plenty of examples of Cranston's rising to the challenge to ensure the show was the best it could possibly be. One of the best comes from the very first episode.
I am speaking to my family now.
The pilot opens with the now iconic shot of Walter and his tighty whities, ready to face down whatever opposition is coming his way. Gilligan directed the episode, and he was concerned for his actors' well-being. Obviously, no one enjoys hanging out in their tighty whities in public. Or, I don't know, maybe you're the kind of person who does. To each their own. Now, I won't judge. Okay, maybe I will judge a little, but I digress. Gilligan actually approached Cranston and asked him if he'd rather wear sweatpants as opposed to the dirty underwear. When Cranston seemed confused by the suggestion, Gilligan explained that he thought Cranston might be more comfortable in the sweatpants. But Cranston didn't take him up on the considerate offer. "No, I'm not comfortable," he told Gilligan, but that's the whole point. Cranston went on to insist that it was necessary to be outdoors in his underwear and uncomfortable because it was the most important thing for the story. Basically, Cranston is the bomb.com. Is that what the kids are saying nowadays? Bomb.com? Hey, did I say that right? Okay, yeah, I'll just let myself out here. This wasn't the only instance of working conditions being physically demanding. In an interview with Entertainment Weekly, Cranston related one of the most challenging experiences he had on the shoot. In the season 2 scene in which Walter and Jesse forced Saul to dig his own grave in the middle of a pitch dark desert night, it was freezing cold and windy. As Cranston recalled, it was like 9 degrees without the wind chill factor and sand was kicking up and blowing in our faces. He could barely hold out his gun without shaking uncontrollably. Emotionally, one of Cranston's most difficult scenes was the moment he walks in on Jane as she chokes and opts to do nothing. He lets her go. All of a sudden, her facial features disappeared, Cranston stated on the Rich Eisen show, and it was replaced with the features of my real daughter, and I saw my real child choking, and it scared me. He goes on to say that
this is some of the emotional risks that actors need to be willing to put out there.
Cranston went on to describe it as one of the most intense moments he's faced in his entire acting career. The take in which he reacts so strongly, imagining his own daughter, is the one they ended up using in the final episode. And one scene that surprisingly wasn't as challenging as fans may think, the scene in which Walter White, in a fit of rage, tosses a pizza on the roof of his house. They got that legendary moment in one take. The rest of the cast had to come to terms with their own emotional and physical challenges. Aaron Paul's toughest scene also dealt with Jane, specifically the aftermath of the moment Cranston referenced. Emotionally, that was the hardest place to go, Paul told Entertainment Weekly. It was not a fun day. I put myself in Jesse's position, and I forced myself to make myself believe that my girlfriend was there, dead in front of me, desperately trying to wake her up, and all of this guilt inside saying, I did this, and whew, not a fun day. Let's switch things up with a slightly less depressing challenge Paul ran into during Breaking Bad's production. For those of you that weren't already aware, Paul's character Jesse wasn't originally supposed to last past the first season, but Vince Gilligan and the creative team loved Paul's take on the character so much, they opted to keep him around for the series' entire duration. That being said, Paul was always on his toes and his co-star Bryan Cranston didn't help the matter. In a recent interview with The Hollywood Reporter, Paul revealed that Cranston would mercilessly tease him and act as if Jesse was off in every new script they received. He would say, "Hey, did you read that next script?" And I go, "No, did you get it?" And he'd just give me this big hug and say, "Hey man, had to end sometime, but at least you go out guns blazing."
What the hell's that supposed to mean?
This happened constantly. Come on, Cranston. Couldn't you give the poor kid a break? You already let Jane die and now you're gonna put him through this nonsense too? How could you? Then there was that glorious moment when Raymond Cruz, the actor who played the vicious Tuco, actually gave Paul a concussion. It was during the episode Grilled. In a Reddit AMA, Paul described the moment in vivid detail. Tuco takes Jesse and throws him through the screen door outside, and if you watch it back, you'll notice that my head gets caught inside the wooden screen door and it flips me around and lands me on my stomach, and then the door splinters into a million pieces. Just another fun day on the set of Breaking Bad. Now, apparently, Cruz thought Paul was acting and kept beating him up. While Paul was game to keep filming, wiser heads prevailed and he was sent to the hospital. We're sure Paul has also faced his fair share of recent challenges, returning to the character for the new Netflix film El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. Aside from rediscovering the character of Jesse as an actor, he needed to keep such a tight lid on the details surrounding the production and story. In the months leading up to the film's release, there has been little to no information revealed other than what little fans can gather from the trailers. Speaking of which, is that movie finally out? It looks so flippin' amazing. While Cranston and Paul had to face the bulk of Breaking Bad's challenges, the supporting cast dealt with some pretty intense moments themselves. Both R.J. Mitty, who played Walt Jr., and Betty Brant, who played Walt's sister-in-law, Hank's wife, Marie, had to be particularly hateful towards Walt in a couple of scenes, and it wasn't easy.
One word. Blowback.
One particularly hateful moment upset Brant so much that she started getting chest pains. "I just felt awful," she said. And then I said to Bryan, "Can I hug you? I hate looking you in the eye and saying that to you and meaning it when I say it." Thankfully, that was the last shot of the day. Once the cast had wrapped, they winded down with margaritas at the restaurant, as they should. Hey, don't judge them, they earned it. Anna Gunn had similar difficulties when her character Skylar had to face down Marie. "It was hard for us to maintain our composure throughout the day," she said. "And it's just heartbreaking because those sisters are like war buddies. They were tremendously close and bonded. So for them to be torn apart like that was excruciating." Mitty's challenge came in season 4 when he has an emotional chat with Walt about Walt's own father. Later on, Mitty explained, "I think the majority of people have been in those situations where sooner or later they have to talk with their father. I definitely remember that talk. I think that was the biggest and hardest moment for me as an actor." And you'd think that lying in bed all day might be an exciting prospect for an actor, but that was not at all the case for Dean Norris, who played Walt's gruff, wisecracking brother-in-law, Hank. Oh yeah, and side note, as a police officer, Hank literally was a brother-in-law. Haha, zing! We got all the jokes here at Screen Rant. Anyway, Hank spent a large amount of season 4 in a dark headspace. As he recovers from his near-fatal injuries, he has to come face-to-face with his mortality like never before. And he didn't take it too well. Neither did Norris, apparently. As he told EW, "I was just constantly in this kind of pissed-off mood. It was just not a pleasant place to go in your mind that you were so helpless. Especially coming from a guy who was a boisterous guy and a tough guy."
I know, I get it, really,
But the cast weren't the only ones that had to deal with challenges and strict rules. The people behind the scenes on Breaking Bad had their fair share of them as well. Breaking Bad creator and showrunner Vince Gilligan was determined to get the science behind the cooking of the blue sky meth as accurate as possible. While the blue color isn't scientifically feasible, it still worked from a storytelling perspective. That being said, Gilligan had to work closely with the Drug Enforcement Administration. He had agents advising him every step of the way. And why was that? Well, according to Breaking Bad science consultant Donna Nelson, it was to ensure he wasn't too accurate. According to her, they helped so that we wouldn't be presenting a cookbook on how to make meth and told them what steps to leave out so that anyone mimicking the procedures would fail. They were also the ones who really know what an illegal meth lab looks like because they've busted them. So the scenes in the Winnebago, the Super Lab, and the Vominos Pest Lab, they helped arrange them. Necessary? Absolutely. We don't want to inspire a new generation of meth cooking madness after all.
DEA, huh?
But the strict set of rules it laid down made clear how important it was to both get the details right and how many of them should be withheld. And this wasn't the end of it either. Gilligan and his team were committed to providing a show that, while entertaining, was still as accurate to real-world rules as possible. While occasionally it might have been creatively restricting, it further reinforced the show's credibility and pedigree. Back in 2015, the New Mexico Law Review actually released a special edition that was specifically devoted to Breaking Bad. In the review's introductory piece, Max Minzner suggested that it was a show that should be required for study in law schools. There's apparently tons of material worth analyzing. For instance, the depiction of a questionable lawyer-client relationship with Saul Goodman and Walter White, or the fact that Walt likely wouldn't get the death penalty despite all the terrible stuff that he's done. Hey, if I could take a law course that would require me to watch Breaking Bad, I would sign up immediately. Wouldn't you?
What exactly are you offering to do for me?
What should be clear to you after all of this is that Breaking Bad's production was blessed with incredible talent, both behind the camera and in front of it. They may have had strict guidelines to follow, they may have had significant challenges to overcome, but they did it. And they did it brilliantly, and it all paid off. the final product speaks for itself. How about it, Screen Ranters? Were you aware of all the challenges Breaking Bad's cast and crew had to go through to bring this masterwork to your television screen? Which moments stood out to you? And how do you feel about El Camino, the new Breaking Bad movie? Let us know in the comments below, and hey, be sure to subscribe to our channel too, so you can keep up with all the great content that we're churning out daily.